This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. It's been one of the weirdest preseasons, training camps. I don't know if it's been weird, but it's definitely been like guarded more so than I think other training camps have been. And to talk about it, I want to bring in Jake Burns. Jake, one of the issues I have with trying to get a gauge off of what's actually going on in camp and what the Browns are going to look like, at least coming into this game versus Dallas, is, and I've talked about this, since they are locking down a lot of what happens in camp, since they don't really have this open to the public anymore, it's not as accessible. We're getting a lot of our analysis of what happened from beat reporters. And I think beat reporters do a fine enough job when it comes to the reporting element of it or getting information from different. It's a different job than breaking down or analyzing the game. And I wonder how much that part of that affects the perception. Because, I mean, we've seen it a lot where a beat reporter will say something and they think it's like this big negative thing, but you look at it and you're like, that's actually pretty normal for that kind of situation. So how do you navigate that? I guess it's my question of just trying to figure out, okay, what can I parse from these beat reporters that feels like real information versus what feels like maybe their spin on it that might not be as informed, to make sure that, you know, if you're a Browns fan watching or paying attention to all this, that you kind of get a cleaner picture than what can be presented at times when you just kind of take these reports as they are.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're saying some things that I really agree with. We've talked about on my side quite a bit. It's been the most weird preseason that they could have because a couple things, right? Coming off a year where injuries dictated everything you thought about, every plan you made, every game plan, every roster move, like you were just busy mentally dealing with injuries. And then you're doing it again early. You're like dealing with all of these guys out and some guys coming back, and you get some surprises in Dalvin and Newsome kind of when they arrive at camp. And the thing that I've kind of arrived at is that they have essentially, they just sort of punted on the preseason. Like they basically took the approach of, we're not going to push guys beyond their boundaries. We want them in the first week of the season, in the first week of September, to be healthy. Like no one's going to remember if we beat the Vikings and the Packers in the preseason. What they will remember is guys that are not there in week one. So our goal is to be healthy week one. You made a good point. The fan experience between Greenbrier and locking down a lot of practices, I think they only had 5 open because one day they were inside. So they only had 5 open. Yeah, they only had 5 open in general. And again, I think we would agree that I love open sessions at training camp, but if they're going to get better going down to the Greenbrier, isolating themselves and team bonding and all of that, then so, do it, right? I don't personally love practices in Berea. They're boring. Like there's not a ton that you can take away from them all the time, and you can't see what you need to see at times, and it's just not great. It's cool for the kids, it's cool for the youngsters, it's cool for like seeing NFL players up close. That's a really unique thing. You get to like really be there. But as far as what you're talking about, analyzing, taking things away, it's really hard to get a ton from that, because some days you'll show up and they're like doing walkthroughs and prepping for the game and running through a game script that's very vanilla. So it's less like we have not had a chance to learn much about this team. We obviously understand 2 things very clearly. The offense is going to evolve, it's going to be different. I've come on your show and talked about it. You've come on my show and talked about it. We have extensively covered this topic, and we would agree that Jim Schwartz needs to develop a changeup, as he quotes, to what he does as a fastball that makes the defense unique. So you're not going to see those in the preseason. They do not want to put their cards out on the table and give teams everything they need to know about the Browns this year. So I think the idea that the preseason started to frustrate them, it started to become this lump sum of injuries. I think the nature of the camp was like, we don't really care about winning and losing. And I think you would agree with me, that was reflected in how they performed. Like, I just didn't think that they were game planning for teams. I don't think their guys felt super prepared in a lot of circumstances. And I just think they wanted to kind of put those guys in very vanilla situations, say, hey, show us
Hmm.
what you can do. So it was frustrating for fans to watch. It was definitely frustrating for, the people like me and you who try to break this down and give you insights for a living. It's frustrating, but ultimately, if they show up against Dallas and they're healthy and they're doing some of the unique stuff, we'll be there Monday. We'll talk through it. We'll go through all the details and it'll all be fine. And we'll all forget the month of August even happened. But for now, it's not great. It's not a ton of information. And we're left to still have a bunch of conjecture about what they're ultimately going to do, which again is tricky for shows like we're talking about right now. But I've tried to lay out, and maybe you've seen them, maybe you haven't, but some breadcrumbs about some offensive wrinkles they're putting in. They're kind of like here and there doing some different things, but defensively, it's very much what Jim has done. Cover three, one free man coverage, and go out there and play guys. And then like we'll see what they're going to ultimately tweak up. But yeah, I think you're right. The beat guys, they're covering it fine. They're doing the best they can with what they're given, and it's hard for them to be there and get the on the field like steal like, oh, looks like they're doing a lot of like 75% 11 personnel today. Like that's just hard. That's just hard to do. So I do think that this is the best you can do from a beat writer perspective and people covering this from what data and information and video we have. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's something that's kind of a difficult balance because, like, for me, I know what makes somebody a great beat reporter is not going to be what makes them a great analyst inherently, right? Like a beat reporter, somebody can get some information, they can kind of read tea leaves well, know how to source different things. And that's not necessarily going to be what leads to somebody who can really figure out what team's trying to get to just from seeing a little bit. And even then, it's difficult to even do that if they were even good at it. But shifting gears here, I want to talk about the offensive line. And I think we've talked a lot this offseason about individual players on the offensive line. We know the debate about Jed Wills is always there. Can Jan Conklin switch from right to left? All of those conversations I think are fine. But I'm wondering with new concepts that they're running on offense, with a new offensive line coach, with a new running backs coach, how much different the protections might look from this year to next year. Or like, are we going to see an increase in 5-0 from this offensive line? Like, is there going to be less times where they keep guys in to help? Like, is this offensive line just from how they're trying to run things offensively, trying to keep more receivers on there? Is the trade-off going to be, hey, they're going to be on the island a little bit more? And how do you feel about what they have in the building to be able to execute those kind of changes when it comes to protection?
So first of all, great question. I do think last year I tried to cover this as much as I could. Even tried to make a video in the last 2 weeks on this. They evolved how they protected to help those tackles because once Jed and Dewan went down middle of the year, like it got dicey. No offense to Leroy Watson and Hudson and those guys who were fighting, but like if you put those fellas on an actual island on 3rd and 11, it's just not
Mm.
going to end well, right? So you have to change your approach. Now, so what the Browns did, and they still really lived in that 11 personnel world, which is a big juxtaposition to what they were doing when Kevin arrived, which they were like the league's leading 13 personnel team. I know Warren Sharp loves to hop on the soapbox and be like, look at their efficiency from 12 personnel versus 11, but you don't look at the volume of usage in those
Mhm.
scenarios that plays a pretty big part of like the actual outcome where one play can sway a massive amount of the efficiency projection there or whatever you're studying. But anyway, they did this last year where they said, okay, these pass situations, we are going to do two, like really one thing in dead pass situation. What I mean by that is like you're either trailing significantly and the clock is fighting you, or you are in a what I call 3rd and 6 plus, which is just again predictable pass. That's what's going to happen. And they would put a back on the wing side and they would put a tight end. They run out of empty. I used to call this like chips empty is what we used to call this. So you'd put them like in a wing position. You would have them redirect the edge who's trying to rush upfield because you would agree with me the most vulnerable place for a tackle to be beat is upfield and then the counter of them spinning inside or club ripping inside. So you put them, they get a body on the tackle's hip to kind of like to chip that edge, slow him down, give the quarterback an extra half to 3/4 to a full second of time to throw. Now it does limit you because you can only get 3 out, right? You're 7 deep up front. 3 out in routes and the quarterback, there's your 11. They did a nice job of developing wrinkles off of that where they were chipping and releasing them to the flat or releasing them on a drag. It was ironic. If you remember that huge Jerome Ford long catch run against the Jets to put the Browns in a huge spot in the first half, they actually chip released and ran him on a Texas route, a little angle route in that spot, which is really cool. He was open. Flacco ultimately kind of scrambled and found him, but they were doing some really fun stuff. And the timing of like Joe reading it downfield, and it wasn't isolated to Joe. They were doing this for Deshaun against Baltimore too, but then he obviously got hurt. But like they do a nice job of like those underneath routes. So like teams will play either bail 2 quarters or deep 3 match, and like they're driving back, spot dropping at times, and then you would dump it to David, and David was a bull in a china shop, and he could run through people and create first downs. Again, think back to the Jets game when that early first possession, 3rd and long, and he creates like a 40-yard catch and run. So it worked for them in that regard. Teams do know that, and I do expect there to be alterations to how they cover those 3rd and whatever situations if the Browns have to go back to it. So that's what they did. And then they also started to do some fun shotgun based, I used to just call this run action, like power play action. So you're pulling the backside guard and then influencing that front side boot side edge inside. And their decision was, we would rather put Joel Bitonio or Wyatt Teller moving laterally onto a defensive end than we would to have him straight drop against Hudson or Watson, right? Like that's pretty obviously an advantageous situation. They got a lot of downfield chunk throws. There was a huge use of that scheme against the Jaguars for a big throw to come back late in that game. They did it to the Bears, to Amari Cooper up the right seam. So they did that too. And those were 2 ways that they really started to unlock some explosive plays late in the season. I don't know how often they're going to come back to that. I think in an ideal world, if you're sitting at 11, you can be more creative with your back out of the backfield now, and we'll put David often to the side of Jack or Jed as they work back. I am going to be very curious watching it super closely. How often are they comfortable leaving DeWand on an island? Because I think you should be trying that, because getting more guys out on routes stresses the entire field horizontally and creates those windows more so than 3 guys. So I do think you'll see some of the 2 things I just referenced. They don't want to completely abandon those things, but they definitely brought in Dorsey with an idea of we need to diversify our downfield 3rd down passing game. His approach, some choice concepts that work into what they do will be a wrinkle to that. But to answer your question, I often think it will be 5.5 in protection. The half being the chip that David provides often before he ducks down the route. And you would also agree with me, like him catching shallow throws is a real weapon for them because he is like a fullback catching and running, but he's way more athletic, but he's so hard to bring down. So like you want to have a slot corner come up and tackle him. All right, he's going to run through his chest or he's going to jump over him, right? You want to have a safety try to cover him. All right, well, he can run away from that guy at times or jump over him in the middle of the field. So like they found this, like, I think it was almost serendipitously like, oh, David's really good at turning shallow throws into yards after catch. Let's just keep doing that for him. Led tight ends in the category last year, and I do think that will be still a feature. But the chess game this year will be, hey, we know what you like to do in these 3rd and pass, so we're going to take that away from you. How do the Browns combat that? That's going to be the most interesting thing.
Yeah, it was interesting to watch that David thing develop when I rewatched the season, because you could see, I think in the Baltimore game, there was a drive in the 3rd or 4th quarter where it was literally just like, okay, we got this one pass to David. He ran it for like 20 yards. Let's do it again. Let's do it again. And then it became, oh, this is how we're just going to use David for the rest of the season. And I know that people are worried about if Watson can do some of those same things that Flacco was able to do, but I think it's worth pointing out that some of this stuff was being done when Watson was in there. It's just,
he did great with that
hurt
against Baltimore. Yeah, he was great with it. I thought if he would have kept playing, I think you would agree with me. That's why the news was devastating. It felt like after that Baltimore game, I'm like, man, that second half, he didn't force he literally just processed what teams are giving them, and he was doing. And then he was adding the benefit of his ability to escape people in the pocket, create with his legs, both in extending to throw and getting some huge runs. It's like, all right, that's a version of Deshaun Watson that's really hard to defend. And then boom, Tuesday, it's like, oh, he's out for the year. So I hope that you would, and I know you would agree with me, like that is the most recent game memory he has, and that's the version of him they need. They do not need hero ball play from him. They just need him to be efficient processing and deciphering what can gain the most yards on every snap, which is a simplistic way of saying to play quarterback. He's going to have to take some risks here and there, but doing that more often than not is just going to be better for him. It's going to help him stay on the field and be a successful quarterback again.
Yeah, I think the challenge for a lot of quarterbacks too is how okay with you are with being a little bit bored, right? Because
Yeah.
it's not going to be like the most exciting stuff that you're going to do. And you see a lot of quarterbacks sometimes they just like whether it's conscious or not, they just decide it's time to try to
And,
make a
and de-
play or let it rip.
and defensive coordinators know that. They know what
Mm-hmm.
you want to do. So they're like, hey, we know if we keep making Watson be patient, he's going to mentally break and force some throws. Like he wants
Mm-hmm.
his nature is not patient. He wants to throw, or any quarterback. I'm not even trying to isolate to Deshaun, but they know how a quarterback mentally operates. He can handle checkdowns all day, and we can get knifed up down the field like little paper cuts every step of the way. Or they know like he's gonna get a hankering to drive one into a window. That was the Baker Mayfield theory. Defenses, and listen, Baker's evolved in his Tampa run. It's different. I'm not even watching him that close anymore, but I can tell you with 100% certainty, just by virtue of hearing this from people in the know, the defensive coordinator's approach to Mayfield was we are going to invite him to make the right throw against the primary all the time because we know at some point he will get ambitious and try to throw that when he shouldn't. They're encouraged, they'll give you those throws that are, 4 to 5 yard average throws because at some point this guy's going to get an itch and he's going to make
Mm-hmm.
a couple of those. That's the nature of how they study these. That's something that people I don't think Quincy talk about a lot is they really study how you think as a quarterback and try to work and combat you into making those worst versions of yourself come to fruition.
Yeah, I mean that's what makes Tom Brady special. It's just he's just willing to do that all game if he has
Yeah.
to, and even like somebody like Pat, who I think has demonstrated he'll wait, even though he's
Yeah.
really capable of doing some crazy stuff. He can wait on you. Yeah, I think that's going to be something interesting to see during the season. So we talked a little bit about David and Njoku, and I think what's interesting is that they brought in Jerry Jeudy this offseason as well. Do you see those two not like literally working in tandem, but kind of working off of each other with the attention that you feel David's going to get because of his ability to be that bull in the china shop, especially in the shallow part of the field? And you would hope Jerry Jeudy could work kind of that intermediate middle part kind of well there too. Like, do you expect that? Do you think that was a big part of what Andrew Berry, Kevin Stefanski, and Ken Dorsey were thinking when they made that move for him? Is, hey, we can kind of he's going to be able to open up some space for David, or David's going to be able to open up some space for him just by the nature of where these two like to play.
Yeah, another fair point. In an ideal world, Elijah Moore was realized in the last half of last year. I think although he has physical limitations, range of catch, I think we saw it on the sideline at times last year. But he is an outside receiver. His best
Mm-hmm.
features, you look at him and you get teased into thinking he could be a twitchy slot guy, right? But he just doesn't feel comfortable in there. He's an outside guy who I think can win on a vertical route tree, comebacks, digs, different concepts from there. So him being outside, I think, is something they're very interested in. And then at times having Jerry be outside and then maybe moving a bigger body inside like Cedric Tillman. But I think Jeudy is a power slot. So I do think they want him to work over the middle of the field and take advantage of leverage situations exactly like you're talking about, where, hey, we have Amari, we can isolate him at X, and we can do what we want if you don't have a guy who can cover him. We're going to try to do that at will. We have Elijah, who we think we can put outside, can threaten vertically with speed, but has a good tendency of snapping off routes. And if we want to hit him on a 15-yard comeback to 12 to get a first down, we can do that, those sorts of things. We need a couple guys over the middle of the field that can be impact players and make teams make tough choices. So to me, you're spot on. The Browns obviously understand that if we're going to get teams that want to press up on David and get, that maybe that hook linebackers, instead of dropping to 12, he's dropping to 7. Well, can we dig up behind him? Can we root him out? Can we invert read him, high low him all the time? Can we isolate coverage, high low guys like Jerry, who Jerry can also win against man coverage too. So there's that element if teams want to get down and walk into your face and play press man and let it rip. But like, I think that's a reason they are drawn to that, is they feel like they have a guy in Jerry who can be a bigger body slot player. Did a decent amount of it with Denver, and the tape is okay. It's pretty good, I think, doing that. And I think that their belief is if we can manipulate people in the high-low portions of the middle of the field through those two guys, we think that can be an asset to our offense. Obviously, not limiting Jerry to just being a slot, like he can play outside, but I think it's like a 65-35 range for him there. And especially because it gets into two wide receiver sets, right, where he's just going to be outside naturally. But I think for the most part, he is going to be a slot player, and they're going to try to pinpoint matchup. Like Cowboys linebacker group is not very good. You can get him in nickel, you can get him in different looks that you think you can take advantage of. Then I do think that there's a world in which that's the large part of the processing for what they wanted to do there.
When we look at this game here for the Browns and the Cowboys, where do you think the Browns' biggest opportunities are going to lie on both sides of the ball to take advantage of when you see how they kind of match up with this Cowboys team, give it offense and defense?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, it's tough. It doesn't it just come down to Micah like bottling him up. I mean, it just is like if he and it's so hard because this is what they're probably saying on Dallas shows. Like if we can stop Miles Garrett, but like I
Yeah.
don't think. I mean, Deron Bland changes things. Him being out definitely changes some of their coverage approach and their comfort. But I think the Browns should have, if they have preliminarily studying this, I've not gone deep into what Dallas is doing in the preseason. Obviously, new DC this year. The ability to put themselves in neutral situations, I do think that they can put Dallas in a bind because what you don't want, and I know you know this, and I think most people know this, is Micah lining up all over the place and maybe a good amount of the game over Jack at left tackle or whoever's starting at left tackle and having predictable pass. Like the Browns have to find a way to gain cheap yards to put themselves in more 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4s than they are the contrary, where they can keep some neutrality to what they're doing. I don't find myself thinking the Cowboys defense is that good that you can't like I think they really thrived on takeaways last year. That's where they drew in a lot of their success. And we all know the high variance of that. I do think there's a chance for the Browns to have a successful game. I think you would know early if they're able to move the line of scrimmage and if they're able to move the football on the ground in some capacity, we'll feel better about it. But as far as matching up goes, I think they're going to threaten Dallas safeties. They're going to put a bind on the middle of the field. I do think they're going to challenge those linebackers and try to keep, as much as they can, a second body over there on Micah, just the same way Dallas will keep a second body as much as they can on Miles, but I think the Browns' depth up front defensively is different than what Dallas has, especially on the interior, rotating, moving, and all of that. Because yesterday there's Dallas folks talking about should they claim Siaki Ika. Like there's concern about their middle group. Obviously, Mozzie Smith is a nice player they drafted, but he hasn't really developed the way they've wanted. So I just think the Cowboys' offense worries me more than the flip side of the defense, right? Just think if you can kind of hone in on some specific things defensively, you have a pretty good chance to find enough 4 drives that can produce some points that get you into like a 24-point range. And I think you get to 21, 24, you got a real good chance to win this one.
And as you touched on something that I really have found interesting this offseason is last year, I think the Browns offense was in and out when it came to like some drives, they looked like they were able to produce, move the ball downfield. Some drives they didn't move the ball at all. And I think it really comes down to what their success was on 1st and 10. Like they just weren't a super successful 1st and 10 team. I think their average, on the ground, the league average is about 4.5 yards carry on 1st and 10. If you just look at the splits, and the Browns, I think, were at like 3.5, which is a whole yard below league average. Do you feel better with the work? And I guess it's the last question I'll ask. Do you feel better this year about their ability on 1st and 10 without Nick Chubb than they were last year to be able to get those 3 yards? Because that's why I was watching all preseason. Like, can they get 3 yards at 1st and 10? Because that's so important.
Yeah.
Like,
it is, man.
They get ahead of the sticks. They're a different offense usually.
I feel like they're holding a lot of run stuff out of the preseason. I hope. Listen, I need you. You are right. They need it, right? They've become a very boom bust run team over the last 4 years. They started out one of the better teams in efficiency. And again, I just like to reiterate, and there's always a great quote from Joe Thomas, who's talked to the Cleveland media in like 2017 and was describing this really well. Like run game average per carry can be deceiving, right? Because you could have -1, a 1, a 2, a
Mm-hmm.
75, a 4, a 1, a 0, and it's like the 75 changes it. Efficiency is 4, 6, 3, 9, 8, 6, 7. That's what it means, staying in front of the sticks and giving yourself advantageous situations. So they have slowly turned into a team that has explosive run plays, but I think they led the league in zero negative runs last year at the top of it, if
Mm-hmm.
not the worst team at the very, very bottom of that. So I do think they are fighting that situation. I think they're going to do less long shotgun pulls where they're pulling guard center, guard out and around, because those are boom bust variations. And I definitely know they're trying to add RPO elements to that to slow down the second level from shooting gaps. So I don't have the answer to that. I don't think anybody does right now, because they just didn't tell us enough in the preseason. But boy, I'll tell you what, if this is second quarter and they're 7 carries for 13 yards,
Mm.
it's going to be concerning, because the success of this offense as a year-long vision is driven by, we need to get back on track, staying in front of the sticks. It just so often last year was Jerome Ford would run for like, oh, nice 12-yard gain, and then they would run 2 times for 1 yard. It's 3rd and 9, and they're punting. Like, they would hit some 10+ runs, and it was, look around the league, their numbers are strong. But they would have these next 2 plays that you can't get, and then it's 3rd and 9, and they're punting. So like,
Or you get
their
a penalty.
efficiency, 100%. Their efficiency is I know this to be a fact, at the top of what they were trying to redesign and reshape this offseason. So we don't have the visual proof of what that's going to look like, because the preseason was very mundane, and I think that again they wanted to protect that. But I hope they need it. They need it in the worst way, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's going to make a huge difference. And like, if the defense is able to repeat what they were able to do, if they're not being put on the field as much, because when you get behind the stakes, at least punts, at least 3 and outs, it leads to more time for the defense to be out there, more time for them to be exposed. It's a sneaky thing, and it's not like a very marketable issue that you can put out
Right.
there and say, hey, the Browns need to fix this. But it's definitely, to me, like, it's one of their most important issues. And like, you could just look at it not just from a Browns perspective. Like, Cincinnati, despite having the talent they have on offense, has been a start and stop kind of offense where they don't produce the efficiency that you would expect an offense with that kind of talent to do. And part of it is because they keep falling behind the stakes. They get penalties, they get sacks, they don't run the ball well, and that makes them far less efficient than they should be offensively. And I think when we do think of that team looking like how Cincinnati looks like in our minds, it's when they're ahead of sticks. It's why they don't look like that versus Cleveland, because Cleveland can get them behind the sticks pretty easily because they've had no answer for Myles Garrett. So it's super important. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how the Browns do that this year and how that comes together. At least by like week 5, you want to feel good about what you got going on there. Like, we can't just be sitting here hoping that Nick Chubb fixes it all. Like, if we're in Nick Chubb's got to fix it all land, it could happen, but it's not a great place to be at. So Jake, thank you for being on. Appreciate you coming on here. Make sure you check Jake out at Browns Film Breakdown. Jake, you want to tell them anywhere else they can find you?
Yeah, man. Twitter at Jake_Burns18. We're there. Like you said, brownsfilmbreakdown.com. That's through Substack. There's an app. There's all that easy stuff to get some content delivered right to you. So, yeah, thanks for having me, giving me a chance to shout it out and all that stuff, bro. We appreciate you so much. And yeah, thanks again.
No problem, man. You have a great day. Everybody else have a great day. Have a better night. Peace.